Hey guys, what's happening? Thanks for tuning in, coming back and watching. I appreciate it. Hope your day is going great. And I am in On1 Photo Raw 2019, and I'm experimenting with black and white photos. I'm a big color guy at heart. If you've seen any of my videos on Luminar or On1 or Topaz or any other product, any other video just about, except for the few that I've done on Monochromes, you know I love my big colors, and that hasn't changed. I absolutely adore colors, but this video is about black and white, and I gotta say, I'm really kind of getting into black and whites. Like all photographers or artists, I hate to use the word artist, it sounds a little pretentious, but all of us that are doing creative things, we tend to morph a little over time. Our taste change and blah, 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 whatever. So while I still love all my big colors, I'm expanding my range, if you will, and diving in a little deeper into black and whites. And so now that I have On1 Photo Raw, I had to do that here. And so other than me showing you the before photos, I mean, this is like a guy in a white shirt with a white background, black and white photos. It's going to be one hell of a colorless video. So hope you don't mind. Let's get into it. Okay, I'm in On1 Photo Raw, and I have this photo here. Here's the preview, and there's the after. Now, this is kind of a high contrast. And I did something I don't normally do, which is if you look at the water, even though it was a longer exposure, not real long, but you know, I don't even know. Actually, it's probably right here, a quarter of a second, enough to get the water flowing. I often will soften that up, but in this case, I wanted to do something different and kind of accentuate the movement of the water because it's a little frantic, a little hyper, a lot going on, and I wanted to bring that up. So let me reset these filters and we'll jump into the edit. Okay, so I didn't do anything in that first tab, which is known as Develop. There's a tone and color filter here. I didn't make any adjustments there. I did everything over here with 3 filters. So I'm going to start with the black and white filter. Just to be clear, if you ever need a filter in On1, you just click Add Filter and you get to the filter menu, easy for me to say. Click black and white and hey, your photo turns black and white. It's amazing how that works. Okay, so across the top here, you have basically some presets that will help you accentuate certain tones. And then you've got this more where you can come in here and hover over that to get a look at sort of, I'll call them black and white presets, right? So these are looks or presets that would be built into the photo. I'm not going to do any of those. I kind of do my own thing. Under color response, you also have channel mixer as an option. And there's a difference there. Channel mixer, you can just kind of drag it to see where it accentuates certain tones in the image, whereas with color response, you get this handy little slider that allows you to do that. And I'm going to use the handy little slider because I like sliders. They're just fun. That's part of the fun is just moving stuff around. So color response, if you look here, I've got the blue all the way, well not all the way, but I got it to 48, so pretty far to the right. So hey Jim, what do these sliders do? Great question, thanks for asking. These sliders here basically increase or decrease the brightness value or exposure value, let's call it luminosity maybe, whatever word you want to use, of that color in the image. So if you remember my image, it looked like that. Lots of blue in the water because this was in shadow in a covered creek. So knowing that there was a lot of blue in the photo, it used to look like this. I could take it that way to make it a little bit darker, but if you look at the water, right, how the lightness, exposure value of the water is changing. So I came over here to increase that, and I went to 46 or 48 or whatever. There it is at 100, probably a little too bright, so I was in the 40s. We'll call it 46. But that's what I wanted to do there. The other thing I like about their black and white filter is you've got tone here, so you can drop that, and as you can see, I made some minor adjustments, a little increase in brightness, a little increase in contrast, a big increase in highlights. Let me show you the before, right? 0, and I went to like 80. So it's a big number, but in terms of the result on the photo, not a massive difference. And then, let's see, shadows have bumped up a little bit. I moved whites to 100. Let me show you what that looks like. Hey, that's a big difference, and it sure is because there's lots of whites in the image. Again, experiment. That's the best way to figure it out because no 2 images are really ever alike. Your photos are going to be different than mine. My next photo is going to be different than this one. So just play around. That's how you, A, learn the product, which is always important, but B, find what you like in a photo and get to the look that you want. And truthfully, a lot of times I don't even know what look I want. I just start jacking around until I find something that I like. And I was here and I was like, ooh, I like that. Took the blacks down a little bit. There's 2 more things here I didn't really use toner, where you can come in and basically pick a kind of a color toned preset. So allow me to take a minor detour and talk about the difference between a black and white and a monochrome. A black and white is where you have basically black and white in the image, right? It's also a monochrome, but it's a black and white monochrome, whereas a monochrome, any of these can be monochromes, but they have a certain color tint to them. So these have a blue tint, this has a copper tint, that has kind of a, well, it's called black tea, antique yellow, right? So those are monochromes. They're not black and white, but they're single toned, right? So that's the difference. So this toner section is where you can basically take a black and white and turn it into a monochrome, right? This is, if you look at it, it's basically split toning. So if you've ever heard me talk about split toning, this is split toning. And that's the easy way that I use to create like a sepia or vintage kind of look. But there you go, you can do that there. And if you apply that, you can also click preserve blacks and whites, which means, hey, don't apply that color tone to my pure blacks and pure whites. Leave those alone, which is really handy to have. And then there's a film grain section as well, which is another reason I like their black and white filter. And you can go in here and pick from, you know, gobs of different sort of film things and add grain to it. I'm gonna go back to none. Not my thing, so I'm not doing that. Next up, I grabbed dynamic contrast, and that's where I kind of got into the grit and saying, you know, let me turn that off again. You can see how smooth the water was, and I'll admit, I like the water like that. I like it very much. I'm a huge fan of long exposures where you get that really silky water or really like silky clouds that are just beautiful and stretched out. I love that, and thus I love this look. But I wanted something a little different. I started out by doing this just to paint it into the rocks, which you can easily do. You can just click there on the masking option, take your brush, paint it into the rocks, so you can have smooth water and kind of crispy, contrasty rocks. But I kind of liked it all the way across the photo, so I left it. Small, medium, large. I did a little bit of all of it. Bumped up the highlights, bumped the shadows slightly down, a little bit up on whites, a little bit down on blacks. Again, before, after, I like them both, but I went for after. The beautiful thing about this is it stores my edits in On1 Photo Raw, so I could export it that way and then turn it off, export it the other way, and have both. Last thing I did was tone enhancer, and this was basically just me bringing up a little bit of clarity, so it's very minor. There's the before, and there's the after. So again, just giving clarity is basically edge contrast, so it just gives a little bit more kick. One more time, before and after, as if I didn't have enough kick from dynamic contrast. Let me turn that off and show you the difference clarity makes. There's before clarity and after, kind of minor, but when coupled with the dynamic contrast, you're sort of, well, not sort of, you are stacking these edits, so you're getting more and more. I like it all those different ways, with and without the dynamic contrast, but I wanted to show you that, and I want to show you one more photo real quick. Okay, here's my next photo. This is shot in the Roman Forum in Rome, Italy. It's just old stuff, which is always super cool. But I like this guy. I like old stuff. I wanted to do something a little different, kind of maybe vintagey and old looking and all that. And I turned it into that. So again, let me reset the filters and we'll get started. Although the first thing I'll tell you is, as you can see here in tone and color on the develop tab, I did bump the exposure. If you look back, kind of dark. Obviously I added a border. I'll talk about that in a minute. Took down the highlights and the blacks and increased the structure a little bit. That was it for this tab. Everything else was done in the effects tab. Let me get that and we'll go into it. Okay, here I was, and the first thing I have is actually dynamic contrast. That's because I wasn't really thinking about making a black and white at first. I was just kind of playing with filters and having fun. But this photo kind of just wants to be black and white to me. So once again, small, medium, and large. I was getting kind of crispy, mostly because I was experimenting with it to see what it did. Took down the highlights and the shadows, bumped up the vibrance a little bit, and I was like, you know, it's a little crispy, but I kind of like it compared from that to that. But it's a little crispy, and then I was like, hey, maybe I'll do a black and white. So I stuck a black and white filter on there, and as you can see, this is where I went into the toner. So I just went in here. You can click on that little box there next to shadows, pick your color and your brightness level. Basically, I went for a steel gray kind of off blue. simply because I like that monochromatic look in a lot of my black and whites. I think of it, I call it like a silvery midnight. I don't know, I'm making up names here, but I just kind of like it. So that's what I did, right? So it was a custom look. It wasn't one of their presets. Again, just played around until I got something I liked. But the blue, I could still mess with that, right? So I could take that down. That's the brightness level that I talked about earlier. Or I could bring it up. I'm just going to leave it where it is. But that was, you know, just something to keep in mind. Oh, by the way, there's also grass here. And if I turn this off, you can see the grass has a lot of yellow in it, right? So here's the yellow. Hey, I just made the yellow darker and I just made the yellow a lot brighter. So that's how those sliders work, adjusting the brightness level of those different colors within the image. So just keep that in mind and experiment, right? It allows you to create really contrasty and interesting images because you can control those individual colors. You also have a dropper that you can drop it in and say, I don't know what color that bush is. Click on that and then adjust it, right? So a lot of variability and flexibility. And the last thing was borders. And I just kind of wanted to check it out because I was playing with the borders. But there's a lot of borders here. There's all these different categories within them. There's you know, lots of different border options, you know, that sort of thing. So you can just kind of go on. I don't want to say forever. I'll choose that. I don't actually remember which one I had now. But yeah, I mean, all these categories exist and lots of different modes that you can blend as well. I think I called that categories a minute ago, but those are different blend modes. You can import your own borders. I mean, there's just a million things you can do. And I'm not one to put a lot of frames or borders around my photos. Some people like them. I only kind of like these kind of grungy borders when I'm doing kind of a grungy photo. I never put them on like what I consider like my more classic shots, if you will. But if I'm doing something grungy or maybe something monochrome or black and white, I might consider it. To each his own. It's in On1 Photo Raw. And I like that it doesn't just stick it on the photo and you lose part of the photo. I like that it's actually slightly shrinking the photo and adding the border around that. So you're not losing anything within the frame. It's just shrinking the frame. So one more time, if you look at like these trees or the top of that cross, when I add the border, it's still the same stuff, same amount of stuff in the photo. So that was two different monochrome examples. Again, having fun, experimenting. I'm diving into On1 Photo Raw, having a great time, to be honest. If you have other things you want me to explore and talk about, please drop a comment down below, and I'm continuing to work through this. And I'll keep doing videos on this. I'm having fun, so I'm going to keep doing it. And I hope it's helpful. I appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, call your mom, all those good things. Have a good day, my friends. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you real soon with another video. Take care. Have a great day, and adios.